All right. So last week and the week before, these are all the character or qualifications or characteristics that we've talked about so far. Okay? And I hope that kind of reinforces what I just said about why we're studying, because, you know, some of these, in my opinion at least, you'd be hard pressed to explain a very clear difference between them. And like I said, I don't want you sitting around when we get closer to that point arguing with yourself of what's the difference. This person, well, maybe he's sober-minded, but I'm not sure if he's self-controlled, that sort of thing. So anyway, that's what we talked about last week. But we're moving on today, and we're going to talk about the elder and his treatment of others. Okay? Titus 1:8 says that he has to be a lover of what is good. And that basically means a man who loves goodness itself. And this is the only place in the New Testament where this word is used. A man who loves goodness itself. Okay? The thought being those who love goodness will encourage it in others, and goodness will be found in their own life. Okay? He has a genuine desire to live purely and decently. He does not privately engage, and we talked quite a bit last week about behind closed doors, I guess, and those sorts of things. He does not privately engage in questionable activities that would undermine his respect if others knew of his behavior, okay? So he's going to be the same person that you see in this building. If you were to drop into his house on a Thursday afternoon, you would see the same individual behavior-wise, okay? Because he's a lover of what is good. And he truly seeks things that are beneficial, godly, and of impeccable reputation. Okay? Clear on that? All right. This one might take a while. Hospitable. Okay? That's in both Titus and Timothy's list of what they must be. The word means one who provides food and lodging for strangers. Okay, and you're going to see here in a second that has sort of a historical and cultural background that leads us to that definition. But the definition still carries, that stranger aspect still carries over into today. Jeremy?
Just a quick comment at the last topic. It just kind of reminded me of Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's pure. It just seems that this is a man who's perhaps mastered that quality, a person who dwells and loves that which is honorable, good, beautiful, of good report. So.
Okay, that's a good observation. In the sermon today, I'm going to try to make some application at the end of it, and that would tie in nicely, I think, with the application that I'm going to try to make in the sermon. So as far as hospitality, keep in mind, because it's familiar to us, the story of Abraham when the three visitors showed up. What did Abraham scurry around to do? Right. He get food for them, right? Immediately tried to start taking care of them. Okay, so that's the kind of mindset, and it really didn't change from as far back as Abraham to up until the time that we're talking about when Paul wrote these instructions to Titus and Timothy. Okay, that had not been that had not evolved out of the culture. It was still very much a part of the culture even at this time. Okay, this is a little bit of a summary of some different historical readings I did. Hospitality was crucial in ancient times because inns were expensive, unsanitary, and often immoral, making it essential for travelers to find refuge in Christian homes. They didn't have Yelp, okay? So they couldn't look ahead and figure out what kind of inn they were going to be staying at, okay? And I kind of get the idea from that bed bugs were like the least of the worries sometimes, okay? You might, and we could kind of run into that. I think all of us, if we know we're going somewhere and going to stay in a hotel, we go on and check the ratings, right? Because especially the unsanitary, all three of those, they still apply today, and we still kind of follow those practices. Too expensive, too dirty, or it's in a bad neighborhood where weird things are going on, right? So, in Jewish and early Christian communities, trustworthy travelers were welcome into homes, often with letters of recommendation to ensure their integrity. Don't have the letters of recommendation, but what did Lot do? When the angels came, they were going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. What was his concern? Right? Get him inside, right? Get him in, not only because of the reputation of the city, but just because that was the thing to do at the time, to bring them. So again, that didn't change, okay? And we see with Jesus, when he was sending out the disciples, and then we see with the apostles when they began, we see that talk about, going to a home, go to one home, stay there. I think we talked about that recently in the Wednesday night class. Didn't you say something? Somebody said something about that, I think. Go into a home and stay there, right? Don't move around a lot, stuff like that. It was still very much a part of what was going on in daily life. Hospitality involves more than providing a bed or meal. It also means creating a warm, accepting atmosphere and offering refuge to those in need. Again, we can't condone his alternative offer, but when the city dweller, when the people in Sodom showed up at Lot's door, what did he do? I mean, he was basically willing to defend. He made a choice that we don't really approve of, right? But it was that important. Those guests were under his care. So it was his responsibility to take care of him, even to that extreme. The Mediterranean culture valued hospitality as a matter of honor, especially for householders who were responsible for providing care and protection to others. So it was important to have that people knew. Yeah, if you're ever traveling through Damascus, be sure to stop at brother so-and-so's house, because he'll take care of you, sort of a thing. Early Christian churches depended on leaders who would model hospitality by opening their homes and sharing their resources. But, again, as I've been trying to stress throughout the class, this is not just on elders. Now, it is specifically mentioned for elders in those two, but Romans 12:13 is just one place where it says all believers, not just leaders, are instructed to practice hospitality, demonstrating love and care for strangers in both ancient and modern contexts. Okay? So, an elder and his wife must be generous, helpful, concerned with the welfare of others. Now, that's somebody's comment that I read. Why would that be important? And his wife. Huh? And I'm not just talking about who does the cooking, right? Sort of thing. Well, okay. And we read from places like Proverbs 31 that's kind of that's her domain, right? Her domain. That's right. Have you ever been with family or friends where the husband and wife weren't getting along at the moment? And that's not a comfortable place to be, is it? So, and for lots of other reasons. I mean, the elder and his wife need to have a good relationship, not just for this, but just in general. Okay? He must be a people person. Okay? Gotta like being around people and talking to people. Not everyone is gregarious. talks a lot, or friendly. Extroverted or comfortable in the presence of others, but hospitable goes beyond personality. Okay? It involves the will. An elder cannot be aloof, distanced from the brethren. An elder, if you want to be an elder, you cannot just say, well, that's just the way I am. I mean, if this is something you need to work on, then that's what you need to do. You need to work on it. All right? And the only way to work on something like this is what? Do it. Right? Just do it. All right? An elder cares about others and shares his home, food, and time with those in need. And I emphasized time. In my way of thinking, that's the most important of the three, just time. Right? All of us that are parents have probably, we realize that, right? You can't, what your kids want most of all is you, right? Not the latest, Xbox game or whatever, okay? Not being on all the teams and doing all the things, right? They want you. And that's the most important thing an elder or any Christian can give to those in need. And early Christians, this is for all of us. Hebrews 13:2, do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some have unwittingly entertained angels. Romans 12:13, distributing to the needs of the saints, given a hospitality. That, I should have backed up another verse or so, but that's talking to all of us, not just to elders. 1 Peter 4:9, be hospitable to one another without grumbling. And then 3 John, beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers who have borne witness of your love before the church. So you demonstrated hospitality. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well, because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such, that we may become fellow workers for the truth. Okay? And I want to read something. Lisa mentioned this to me on the way over. So either Sylvia or Barbara, Sylvia left. I thought she was sitting there. Okay. Whoever's turn it is to teach in the ladies' class this coming Wednesday, I'm stealing your thunder a little bit. Because Lisa mentioned this to me, and I asked her to see if she could find a book here. Okay, and I will admit in front of everybody that this is an area I need to work on. Not because I don't like people, but because I worry too much about my house and what it looks like and all the things. So I've got to do better. I've got to convince myself that if you come to my house, you're not coming to see that my siding is dirty, that my siding is cracked in some places, that some of the rooms need painting. I have got to get over that, okay? And I'm trying. So this is the book that the ladies use on Wednesday night. In this particular chapter, it's called The Kitchen Table, but the author of the book is sharing her experiences as a child. And one of you ladies, I assume that her father was a preacher. I think I haven't read the whole book, but just what I see right here, she's the child of a preacher. Okay. And at the particular time, they lived in a house next to the church building. And as usual, they didn't make much money. But she said up here, it just seemed normal to have anywhere from 4 to 104 guests congregating in our home. Now, some of you may ask, Becky is the lady's name, how in the world did your mom feed all those people? That's a great question. I told you how Mom was a thrifty food manager. When she went grocery shopping, she carried coupons and hit every store in town that had a special. On top of that, she adored day-old bakery stores. I begged her constantly, Mom, can we please have a fresh loaf of bread this week? And her consistent reply was, no, it costs too much. Day-old is fine. I never won that round. She stocked up on old donuts, pastries, you name it. Then she froze all those delicacies in our huge old Amana freezer. When company came over, she would slap those old donuts on a cookie sheet, ramp the oven up to 500 degrees, and cook them as fast as possible. She burned the bottoms of them every single time. Trust me, I know these things. Laughing, she would scrape off what she could, put that odd looking thing on a plate, mix up some hot chocolate, and pull out some cold apple cider, and we all had a feast. I remember one time in particular when the masses crowded into our house. It was near payday, so they were out of money and out of groceries. She pulled me aside and asked, "Becky, what do we have to eat?" I said, "Orange soda pop, cheese, and crackers." She replied, "Then that's what we'll have." And we did. Okay. And I think it was in here, maybe Lisa just said it, but basically I mean, you can all think of good times that you've had at other Christians' house, but what do you remember? Do you remember what you were served, the food, or do you remember the being together and enjoying each other's company, right? That's the important part, right? And that's important for the elders, as we're going to talk about here in a second. They lead by example in that, but it by no means relieves each of us responsibility. And let me say something. This might be an unpopular opinion, but coming in this room and eating together is not hospitality. It's not fellowship either. All right? I have a sermon I'm working on. We've really, the church has lessened the impact of that word of fellowship over the years. And it is not an adjective, fellowship. To use that word in a Bible way, you would not call this a fellowship room or a fellowship hall. It's not used that way because fellowship means so much more than that. But, yesterday we talked about potluck once a month. That's great, okay? But that can't be it. That can't be it, okay? So, all right, I talked a lot. Anybody want to add anything, Brady?
I think about hospitality needs to be done with the right attitude, and I think that's concentrating on the people more than the things. I think of Mary and Martha. Martha was so worried about the things, the serving, than the people who were there. And I think that definitely needs to be our concentration when we do that.
Yeah.
That was what I was going to mention too. Mary and Martha. When Martha was preparing the food, that was good. But Mary was over there with Jesus doing the best part, as Jesus said. She was listening to Jesus. And she was also using the best perfume to wash using her hair to wash. She was doing the best part, but Martha didn't realize that. So getting back to what you said earlier, when a woman and man, if they do have a little bit of a problem, they need to hash that out and go through the procedure before you have a bunch of company.
Right.
And get that worked out and say, listen, one of us needs to do preparing and the other one needs to entertain the company.
Okay. And all of this is taught in the scripture. What does the scripture say in the Old Testament? Better a dish of what? Herbs or vegetables than fine dining in the presence of the king.
I was literally going to make that comment.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, there's 3 verses right in a row there. It's Proverbs 15:15. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but the cheerful of heart has a continual feast. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened ox and hatred with it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think our society is quite a bit different. A lot of folks these days don't live where strangers would even come, hardly, due to one thing and another. But I think that's definitely the best way. But the strangers that we meet, we've got to meet them somewhere. So I see also an importance of, we have strangers that come to visit with us. And we don't always have home cooking ready that day. But I still think it's very important to let them know on a one-to-one basis, not invite 50 out at one time necessarily, but to let them know that they're welcomed and buy them a meal. And another thing, back then, they didn't have Chick-fil-A's and
Right.
all this on every corner. So we I think, still have a responsibility to work with the strangers that even visit. And I don't know the meaning of hospitality like you do, but, and I'm sure that probably the most effective is to have them in your home, if possible. But a lot of times I think these days we still owe it to strangers who visit here to make them feel welcome and to say, well, that was a mighty friendly hospital group that we visited.
I invite people to Chick-fil-A on Sundays all the time, and nobody ever wants to go. I tried.
I'll meet you there.
Anyway. But you said an important thing, and it's true, but it's something, I mean, we're not all individually responsible, but in a way we're collectively responsible for this. We are super spread out. But there's no verse that there's no like footnote or anything where I can say, well, if you live more than 20 miles from the church building, you get a pass. You don't have to do this, right? So we have to be willing, if we want to truly practice what we preach, right? We have to be willing to drive from here out to Brady and Sylvia's or, whatever, Ashton.
I think, one of the things that jumps to me, and I still have some study to do in the area for sure, but I think of the connection with hospital. And I'm not saying that you can't show hospitality until somebody's beaten up on the side of the road, but I think of the Good Samaritan showing hospitality. And he was pretty far from his own home, but the practical situation called for him to share what resources he had and look after someone's needs.
That's right. Jeremy?
I think we also have, this falls on everyone, we also have to be willing to receive and accept hospitality. If we don't have an environment where we're willing to allow someone to practice hospitality towards us, it can't work.
Right. And I don't know, we were probably guilty of this. I don't remember a specific incident, but we may have. But it is kind of common, especially if you have young kids. Someone invites you over. He's like, well, the kids are tired. The kids, this. I mean, that's just all part of what you got to deal with, right? So, all right. I think that's the end of where did I put my pad?
Right here.
Oh, okay. All right, I need to change the. So we were, like I said in my email, we were supposed to be talking about teaching, app to teach today. But I switched things around. And this is a good time to say Brady will be teaching the class next Sunday. And then the Sunday after that, I'll just have to see. I've been told to expect tinnitus and dizziness. So but everyone's mileage varies. So I'll just have to see what my mileage is for the Sunday after that. If I'm good to go, that's what we'll talk about. So again, if you haven't answered that question for me yet, you have until January 18th, okay, to get it. All right, so let's talk about the elder and his work. What is he supposed to actually be doing? I'm going to get back in my notes. An elder, first of all, is a steward, right? And that word is used as an overseer, as God's steward, must be above reproach, okay? It literally means house law, right? So someone that's in charge of or enforcing the law of the house. And of course, we know we're talking about big houses of wealthy people, kind of where the idea came from. So we see words like manager or administrator. I don't like the word administrator, and some other versions say superintendent. I don't like those words just because to me they give too much emphasis on like a business manager, and I hope we've established by now that that is not what an elder is or is supposed to be. I'm going to get way down to my notes here. Okay, other translation, entrusted with God's affairs, manages God's household, and the NIV uses that phrase, and that's what the since an overseer manages God's household. Entrusted with God's work, there's superintendent, one of them used, in charge of God's work, administrator, oversees, or I thought that was the God's servant manager, and one of the more modern translations puts it that way. Okay? So he's just looking after things that are going on. Okay? From cultural context, a steward watched over the management of a household or of household affairs, specifically the management, oversight, administration of others' property, the office of a manager, or overseer stewardship. Today we would call it a butler, I guess, or something like that, if we had such a thing. And of course, Luke 16, now I'm not saying he's a good steward, but the parable of Luke 16 gives you a very good picture of kind of the authority and the areas of responsibility that a steward back then might have had. Joseph is another one, right? That's essentially what he was serving in all his different positions as a steward, okay? Especially Joseph, right? Even when he got all the way up to Pharaoh's level, right? Who was the only one above Joseph? The Pharaoh, right? So that's kind of how the steward idea worked back then.
I think the worthy woman is probably a pretty good parallel as well.
Okay. Because it does emphasize that her husband doesn't have to worry about anything, basically, right? And that's kind of the idea with a wealthy landowner. He didn't have to worry. In this case of the parable of the dishonest steward, the master was gone, right, for a while. So, all right, elders are to watch out for the souls of believers. Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls. The idea carries with it, or the word carries with the idea to be watchful, to stay awake, or to be vigilant. Some even say to be sleepless, right? To be losing sleep. Can you imagine elders losing sleep? Right? If you got some members, now we just looked at one, and there are others. I mean, the scriptures charge us to be good sheep, right? Not to be, no, I won't say, to be good sheep. To be good sheep. I'll say it. I was going to say, don't be the black sheep, be the good sheep, right? But you can imagine, even though we have those instructions, we don't always do what we're told. And there are, I'm sure, members all over the world that cause the elders to stay awake, worrying about them. Don't be that sheep, okay? Distracted shepherds are unfit to take care of the house of God, okay? It's got to be that important. Timothy said, if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? That's why the connection to a family and how well he leads his family is so important. We all know, I'm sure, what do they call absentee fathers, right? They go to work, they make the money, but they're hardly ever home, hardly ever there, hardly ever involved with their family. You cannot have that kind of person trying to serve as an elder. If your job or your hobbies or anything else keep you too busy to serve the flock, then you should not seek the role, right? And I think we mentioned that when we were talking about alcohol, right? You got to be ready to serve at a moment's notice sometimes, right? Someone calls you at 2 o'clock in the morning, their loved one just passed away. They want you there, right? You got to be able and willing and to go. So it's not just a during church hours kind of a job. Any thoughts on that? Okay. Elders are to shepherd, and that's was used in Acts 20. Shepherd the church of God. We understand what that means: to feed or to tend the flock, to keep the sheep. Okay, basically, if you've ever been around sheep, you got to kind of watch them all the time and take them about everywhere. You know, they're not the smartest of creatures. When we lived in Germany and visited down in the Bavaria area, the cows, now the boys would drive them out to the fields in the morning or lead them out. But in the afternoon, the first time we were ever down there, we're walking around through this little Sound of Music kind of a village. And all of a sudden, all the cars are stopping. And we're like, why is everyone stopping? And here come the cows, right? The cow with the bell, literally the cow with the bell, leading her little... Sheep can't do that, right? Sheep can't do that. The cow's good. So, we don't need that. So, again, I just mentioned this verse: obey your leaders and submit, for they are keeping watch over your souls. All right? And Peter said, shepherd the flock of God that is among you. Right? Food and water, in other words, nourishment, right? Shepherd's responsible for that. Safety, the shepherd's responsible for that. Right? Because here's what they went on to say: I know after my departure, fierce wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. Okay? That is the primary duty of an elder. The primary function of an elder, and too many congregations, in my opinion, get this wrong. The primary function of the elder is not to handle the church's money, okay? Or to take care of business matters. Okay? Those are why you get deacons, right? This is the elder's primary responsibility. That's the elder's job.
When we see a picture of that, I mean, Paul's prophetic utterance here, because, you know, we're not privy to the details, but that happens. And now Timothy is sent in to clean up whatever mess happened, to reestablish the eldership in Ephesus.
Okay. And that's a primary example. We talked about this way back at the beginning of this class when we talked about the universal and the local church as a primary example of why each congregation is autonomous, right? That problem was prevented from spreading throughout the entire brotherhood. Okay? So, whenever you're thinking about your elders, think about this picture, right? That is their job. All right, they are overseers, okay? Oversight, visitation, office of a bishop. And just because I've been dealing with this all my life because of my last name, so I was curious while I was getting this lesson together. It's like, how did we go from episcopos to bishop? It just doesn't matter. Why is bishop a translation of episcope? So just real quick, I'm probably the only nerdy thing I'll do. I have more detailed information. If you're interested, I'll send it to you. But it basically just changes in spelling and stuff. So by the Middle English times, that's Chaucer, right? Right. The time of Chaucer, we were already saying bishop. And anyway, so that's how it's really, it's like a transliteration almost, like the word baptize, but just some changes in spelling. So that's why. The Greek term for overseer was used in secular Greek with a fairly broad range of meanings for someone who watched over someone else. This could be a tutor who watches over students, a soldier or a watchman who watches over a city, a guardian, a deity, or any other kind of guardian. Okay? That's where the idea comes from. And finally, I think this is the elder is an example to the flock, right? It's to lead a life worthy of following. All right? Peter encouraged to the elders, be examples to the flock. Godly leadership in the church that can serve as examples to the flock involves sensitivity to people's needs, affection for people, authenticity of life, and enthusiastic affirmation without deception, greed, flattery, or authoritarianism. Okay. Remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. All right. That's the end of what I have for today. Any closing comments or thoughts on all that? Yes.
I would like to say that the two elders that we have, I have never come to an assembly or seen them anywhere that I didn't get greeted by them. And not only how you doing, but they actually stand there and wait for you to tell them. And I've seen it, and it's not just with me. I see them do it to each one. And what they remind me of, just because of my background, what they remind me of is a sheepdog that's sniffing each sheep that comes. Are you all right? Are you well? Are you okay? What's going on? You know, and I see both of them doing that all the time. And I just want to thank you for that and bless you for that. Thank you.
And I'll speak, while we're speaking on that, like what Scott said, that's something I try to work on because I think I fall short.
Right.
It's something, no, I think that it's something that I strive to work on, you know, every aspect of it.
Okay, Brady, anything to say about next week yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Be here, bring your Bible.
I will continue my attitude.
Attitude.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.